of the 3 hours, I will sit there and say, is your brain hurting? It should be. We just finished all our exercise. And then they won't go and do the practice that's necessary because they're exhausted. And they're exhausted till the next class. They don't want to do anything. The heck, you know. And I think that this type of research and information that you're sharing, I think we all, as teachers, need to do that. And we all need to stop that whole mechanism that math, well, I just wasn't good at math either. So regardless of what our degrees are or what we support, it's exactly this. I mean, we've all got to believe that we all could have done the math. Maybe it was a teacher that was hard, or we didn't get it, or we weren't mature enough at the time when we did math, but you're absolutely right. I mean, it's wonderful to see this because so much is coming out about math.
So what did you like about her technique she was doing in the class? I mean, in terms of engaging them in the math, gym, and everything.
Analogies.
What?
Analogies.
Analogies, right? Because the brain likes that. We pick that up. Okay? You're prompting interest with them. You're trying to make it related, right, to their lives. And what we find, that's going to be my very conclusion, those 3 statements that are there. When you're related, you gather interest, people focus a lot more, then you're engaging the brain, and that's what we're doing. That's one of it. To go along with what I was saying, there's another term we use in brain psychology is assisity, and that's the concept that neurological connections grow through experience, especially from birth to age 10. They continue throughout life. I said it a second time. Plasticity refers to the ability of the human brain to change as a result of one's experience. The brain is plastic, okay, and malleable. We can change it, right? It's very important that's there. That goes back to what you were saying, is that don't reduce those old perceptions that are there. We can change them, okay, through hard work. Now, someone who has that thought, they're going to have to work harder. You're going to have to work harder, okay, in there to get them to do it. But it can change. It can change. Okay. Application, use it or lose it. Right? That's just so important in all of our lives. And those of you who have white and gray hair, that's really important as we get older.
Because this ties back, doesn't it, to stroke victims, which is that they can recover by use of their limbs.
Right.
If they're not stuck.
One part of their brain is gone. But what they can do is through rehab, physical therapy, the brain is incredible. It just says, okay, let's move that area for left arm function over to another area. It's supposed to be in the right part of the brain and the motor function that's there, but we can actually move it in another area, okay, because the brain has the plasticity to it, and we can change it. A whole new area of the brain comes back on so they can start moving their arms or whatever else. Very, very true, sir. Sensitive periods and plasticity studies tell us that you can teach old dogs new tricks. Multisensory learning is very important at young ages. Use it or lose it applies to my life and learning. And my brain's neural connections are misfiring and different than everyone else. That's a trick question. One, two, 3, 4, or 5.
Is my you or me?
It's you. That's a personal question. I guess you could ask the person next to you who you may work with pretty well if it's your brain that's misfiring. Okay, 1, 2, 3. All right, so 73% say all of the above. Sure, it's all of them that's there. Why is your brain misfiring? Well, that's going back to everybody's brain is a little different. And some of the most unique people in the world, when you take a look at their brains, are pretty different in the connections that are there. But there's a tendency psychologically for all of us, if we're different than everybody else, then we're strange and weird. Okay, that's there. But I don't know what strange and weird really means anymore, and hopefully you don't either. Everybody's brains are a little bit different. I'm focused on this lecture. Are you still with me? Or did you drift off? I mean, it's 2 o'clock, you know, past that, kind of tired. It's good that it's kind of cold, it keeps people away. Are you still with me? Let's see. Yeah, you all are still with me. Good. So one person's kind of in and out. But what were you doing? What was going on, and what were you doing that a majority of you say you're with me?
It's just interesting what they're finding from the study of the brain in terms of being able to take pictures of it to actually prove just what Debbie was saying a few minutes ago, that once you can actually prove it with that picture, then you can start to deal with some of the misconceptions.
Right. So you were paying attention because your brain was going, you were in the subject, okay, and you were involved with it. That's part of the key word. Let me just mention, this is a quick aside. If you ever study these brain studies that go on, they're incredible studies that go on. There's one big problem with it, though, is that there aren't a lot of these functional MRIs around the United States. They're developing more and more. By the way, UTD has one of the premier centers for the study of the brain here in Dallas. I mean, they're tops. They're incredible research right now. But when you look at the research studies, there are only so many people you can put in there. So when they do these studies, they may have a study of 10 or 20, 40. And if you know anything about research, you don't do studies and come to conclusions with those few numbers that are there. So you kind of look at these studies and you kind of wonder about some of the research, but still good stuff that they're doing. Okay. All right, let's get into another section here. What's your, my average attention span is what? There's no right or wrong answer to this one, right? So what's your average attention span?
What's the question?
Where was it?
So is the average attention span beginning to decrease?
Yes, it is. It is. And I'll tell you the answer to this right now. The average attention span is about 20 minutes. Okay. We're all over the place. Some of you.
College professors.
Must be Sam. Is that Sam?
He's not here.
When it's not.
That's pretty short. That's it. more than 20 minutes where you people can focus. I mean, that's one person basically. A couple of people who do that. That's pretty good. But it's about 20 minutes, but it is reducing over the years. Reducing. Too much stimulation. Way too much stimulation. What happens is that I get distracted for this.
Yep.
You all know that multitasking is non-existent, right?
Right.
I don't have to go into that. You just can't do it. The brain doesn't work that way. You cannot do it.
Except that changing your focus is a skill.
Yes, it is.
So if you do it, the more you do it, don't you get stronger at it?
Well, that was when I talked to my students about driving, you know, talking on your phone and everything else. The question always comes up, which is what you're talking all this about the brain, and we're retraining our brains. Could we ever train our brains to multitask? Well, yeah, I guess you can, but how quickly can you change that focus that's there? And when you go from one task to another task, you can do this task well, but the other task gets reduced. Because that's just the way the brain works. It's there. But it is being reduced. And I'll get to that too. Hippocampus. All right, well, I'm going to get into attention span and everything. It has a major role in learning and memory. It's an important part of the limbic system. It's a cortical region that regulates motivation, emotion, learning, and memory. This is our field, right? How do we motivate people? Right? It's about emotion and learning and memory. The hippocampus is all about learning. We used to say that once your neurons develop, that's it. There's no such thing as neurogenesis. once you got them, do various drugs, have traumas, concussions, you're killing off those brain cells. Well, what we find out is the hippocampus is capable of neurogenesis. And it's the process of growing new neurons that's there. Okay? It's the seed of learning that's there for us. All right, where is it? It's deep. It's like a little seahorse. That's right here. But look how connected it is with the major hormone areas, as well as the amygdala, which is the seat of emotions that's there for us. All right, still with me? All right. It's 59 minutes we've been here, so you're hanging in here. All right. All right. Yeah.
That just prompted something that made me, you hear about all the football injuries.
Yes.
And let's say, like, Troy Aikman had a lot of hits. Could he regenerate? I mean, and what would he need to do that?
Well,
If possible.
the physical therapy for people who have that, it is about regenerating some of that. So yes, he could be regenerating that. But most of those football players have too much damage. I mean,
That's what
and
I was wondering.
Troy Aikman, every time I listen to him, seems pretty clear and everything. He may be one of the lucky people that's there. But yeah, I mean, that kills brain cells, period. That's the big problem with a lot of them. The rehab that they're doing with the people is to try to activate and develop more to make new connections, not about neurogenesis. And this is fairly new that they're doing. It's really trying to make new connections there.
So I was just going to share that when I was 21 in college, I had a TBI that wiped out my short-term memory and some of my long-term memory. And over time, it has improved. I'm at probably about 75% of what I used to be. I used to be one of those students that would read the material before the test, make an A or a B. And I had to teach myself how to study because I never really had to do that. But because of the brain injury, I had to retrain how I learned. So there is definitely...
It's a lot of work though, isn't it?
Yes, it has been.
And that was why I was asking the question, if you've had like 3 TBIs, it's still, there's still that hope because there are a lot of things you can do to keep stimulating your brain and doing other
And I
things.
tell you, the other problem
And
with
it does
people
take a lot of
who
work.
have that and PTSD people is you're trying to relieve yourself. So then you wind up taking other drugs. And then you have a dual diagnosis that's there. And then those drugs interfere with the recovery that's there. And that's a sad problem. Somebody else had their hand up.
I've been thinking about something since you said the plasticity part. I think I remember reading a while ago about people who are non-neurotypical or people who are high-functioning autism have greater plasticity in their brains. And so I'm wondering if you've heard anything about research on teaching non-neurotypicals or autistic people and applying that to neurotypical people to help them learn if their brains aren't as plastic.
I wish I had the answer, but I don't.
Okay.
In fact, Reza and I was talking about autism before, and as I was listening to you, I went, I don't know a lot about that, enough to do this.
It'd be very interesting, know how you can get tapped into somebody.
Yeah.
To find that little niche, and at what point can you do that?
Do that. That's a great question. I just don't
Because
have the
they
answer.
might have a lot of knowledge about something and you just can't reach it.
There's more studies referring to what you're saying with ADHD, and they've looked at the functional MRIs, and there's emerging research on autism, but definitely a link to ADHD and the plasticity in the brain and the divergence in the brain. So,
As greater or reduced for ADHD?
greater.
Okay.
It's like, that's what they're finding. It's like, there's, like you were saying, they can retrain their brain to do something. Reading, for example, creativity is related to ADHD, so all of that is that neuroplasticity piece.
Okay. Homework.
Good, so if you were in my class and she didn't give the answer, I would say, for extra credit, go find that out for us. I mean, right, because you're interested in that, I'd be fascinated with that. So let's motivate her to go do that. But we had an expert here to take the answers. She got you. Working memory is like short-term memory, but lasts longer and allows for executive functions such as planning, organizing, rehearsing. The capacity of working memory increases with age. Pre-adolescence is 5 to 10 minutes, adolescence is 10 to 20 minutes. So as they get older, the working memory gets a little bit better and better. That's there. We asked the question about attention span, that's there. That's part of working memory, how well that you can focus. Application, learning modules that last 15 or 20 minutes. Okay? Then you need to do something, whether it be little feedback questions that I have for you, something to relax and then go back again. That's there. We also find that if you pause for 7 to 10 seconds after making really important statements, okay, the brain has that time to take it in, think about it, process it, and then you move on. If you get people like me, sometimes you talk much too fast, not as fast as Sam, okay, but pretty fast. That's there. Sometimes people miss that information. So the pause is usually very good. Just as an aside, when the mind wanders, happiness also strays. When they look at lectures and they ask for an hour-long lecture, 40% of the time, minds were wandering when they ask people about that. Right? Focusing will make you happier than daydreaming. Remember the old 60s statement of be here now? Right? Flow, immersing your mind in activity. When the Dallas Cowboys used to have good teams, there was a coach, Jimmy Johnson, and he was supposedly a psych major when he was in undergrad school. I don't know if that's true or not, but a fellow who wrote a book called Flow, and I can't pronounce his name, we used to call him Dr. C. And what he said was, if you can get athletes, musicians, artists, if they get into a flow and are here now fully focusing, it's as if their whole brain is just kind of like opened up, okay, ready to experience, okay, what's going on. So we're trying to develop that in our classes and learning and everything else. Those of you who are athletes, or if you're a musician, you learn those skills of trying to immerse yourself and just flowing with things. Okay? I mean, that's such a great concept, to be able to flow, to be sensory, right? To really feel things, smell and taste. Wouldn't it be great if you just paid $40 for a meal, that you sit down and go, and you slowly taste it and eat, really kind of being one with that. What a great experience that is. Not an easy thing to do when there's all kinds of other distractions and you're thinking about other things. So we're trying to induce that. So applications of that is that we're looking for, I'll read this to you because you can see it, aha moments. Right? You've had aha moments where it's kind of like, got it, it's right there. So we're trying to look for that. When you walk around a classroom and you look, do you look in people's eyes to see if they're having an aha moment? I get my energy when I look at the class and I find somebody who's really paying attention. You know, their eyes are going to dilate and everything else. It could be because they're scared. Right? They dilate and you look for those people. You get energy off of those people that are there. And if one picks up and someone else picks up. Right? Students pick up on our energy as well. Reduce secondhand distractions to increase that flow that's there. Secondhand distractions, somebody's talking to somebody else in the class. That's there. Somebody's phone goes off. You know, those are all secondary distractions, and we're the managers of a classroom trying to manage that. Chunking information, that's what math is all about, chunking information. In psychology, we've always talked about scaffolding, okay? Building one small step at a time, that's there. If you're a history instructor, you had a long history of elementary and junior high school and middle school where they went over history, okay, in certain sections, and they built the scaffold of that's there. The brain works better with chunks of material, one small piece at a time. Learn it, moved on. That's the basis of the publisher's adaptive learning as well. Mnemonic devices work. Why do mnemonic devices work? Because they're fun. They're interesting. every good boy
That's fine.
is fine. Right, what's another one? What's the one for math? My dear,
Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally was the one from previous years, and now they have PEMDAS. So, yeah.
but they're fun. And what happens when they're fun and somebody is focusing in on it, right? They're letting that flow and you remember that stuff, that's there. And this helps a lot. Yoga, meditation, altered states of consciousness methods, being able to just teach your mind to stay with something and to focus. As part of my class, I'll do that. Okay, we'll go through certain procedures about how to focus, okay, relaxation responses and things like that. They all work.
What about, have you got the mirror neurons?
Mirror neurons. I wasn't going to cover that today, but I do have slides on mirror neurons. Again, it's one of the most fascinating parts of research. What we find with mirror neurons, I'll just give you an example real quick since you asked it, that if I was a dancer and I broke my leg, okay, and I knew about dancing and I had to rehearse and I thought I'd be able to come back in 2 months and go ahead and perform that way. If I knew the routines, I didn't have to practice it. All I would have to do is watch a videotape, particularly of me, and do it. And what it would do, it would activate a mirror, a reflection neuron that's there, and learning would take place. Okay? Not by doing, but by watching, just another sense that's there. It's a really quick explanation of it, but again, that's fascinating stuff. And there's a lot of stuff with mirror neurons and ADHD with that as well. I don't want to get into too much of it. I'm running out of time, but you're right. But yoga and meditation, again, it's focusing, teaching people to focus. Still with me, right? Yeah. All right. Here's a biggie, emotional learning. The amygdala plays a central role with emotions, relaying information from the senses, the hypothalamus, to induce the endocrine system to release hormones to start the stress reaction. We are still animals out in a hostile environment trying to survive. The more you can attach emotional learning, okay, engage the emotional brain, the better people are going to learn something. Because when we were walking along and we almost stepped on what we thought was a twig, but actually was a snake that was there, we jump back, right? There's an incredible cortisol reaction that's there, a stress reaction, and automatically the amygdala and the hippocampus come together. And you remember for the rest of your life, okay, to watch out for sticks because they could be snakes that are there. The more emotional a reaction is that you have, the better memories you're going to have. Now what do? Induce fear in our classrooms?
Make you cry.
Do I have proms and electrical shocks for things like that? Well, they probably would work, okay? But let's talk about that. Before the cognitive parts of the brain can be activated, the amygdala can cause an emotional reaction that's based on fear, not logic. We make decisions more on emotions than we do on logic and rationality. Now here's another one. All right, still with me? I shouldn't even put this one up because you can right there. I can feel that. You can feel that? So when you're in a classroom, do you feel a class? It sounds like a weird question. It's emotional, but sure you can. You can sense what's going on in the class. So here you go. One person's up. Pictures are always good, right? Pictures are good. I've gotten rid of my videos. I'm not going to share any videos. I'm running out of time, but pictures are good. You get to see how close all this is. Hippocampus, amygdala, okay, closely associated. Emotional learning. Teens process information more through the amygdala than they do the neurocortex. Emotional-laden material can harm or improve learning. Here's just the third statement. The emotional brain seems dominant until the late 20s. So when you're a 15-year-old and you're having that discussion with them, and you said, "What were you thinking?" And they said, "I don't know." That's a pretty accurate statement. They weren't thinking. It's an emotional reaction that's there. Applications. Anything to induce emotions. You have film clips. By the way, you don't want to show a 20-minute film clip. People are sleeping after that time. So you can do 2, 4, 5-minute film clips. Just anything from current movies that they can attach to. Changing intonations as you talk. Storytelling. Told a story about my mother. What that does is that connects someone to you. Discussions, break down small groups, any social connections that you can form in the classroom. It's all emotional. It's all emotional. It all elicit emotional responses. See, I'm inducing an emotional response. Is that an emotional response for you? I mean, guaranteed. Guaranteed. That was from 14 months ago, by the way, recovery comes. Now, to be fair, we'll do another emotional reaction, because a lot of people have emotional reactions from Trump's side about someone like that. Right? Did you ever just say sex in your classroom? I mean, that wakes people up. What are you talking about with that? Just in case things get boring in the math class. Emotional reactions that are there. Something called the reticular activating system. Okay, deep in the brain, part of the reticular formation that keeps us vigilant, awake, and alert. Right? Awake and alert. We got it. The brain has a natural propensity to seek out novelty. Anything that's new, different, strange, dangerous. Okay? Emotional. The brain adapts to unchanging stimuli. That's there. So you're in a classroom, somebody comes in late, the door slams, forget about it. You might as well stop, because everybody's brain went to what just happened. Anything that's new and different. Brain adapts to unchanging stimuli. Okay? It's just natural for it to do this. Animals out in the society. You go home today, okay, somebody in your house is cooking a certain food, you walk in and you go, "Wow, right, spaghetti sauce. That's good." Within about 3 or 4 minutes, you no longer, keyword, perceive the spaghetti sauce. Because your brain said, "Oh, not dangerous, I know what it is, smells pretty good, all right, move on." You lose it. As I talk to you about the brain, what goes on, do it up here. When I talk to you about the brain, there are many different things I could be saying to you. And if I don't change my intonations, what's going to happen is that your brain will automatically, okay, lose focus, because it what? Adapts. It just adapts. So you've got to constantly change the stimuli that's there. It's part of your question before about attention span. That's there. The brain just does this. All right, the RAS, reticular activating system, will pay attention to any new stimuli, anything new coming up. Application must change. We must change stimuli to keep attention at the maximum. Changing stimuli. Turn PowerPoint on and off. I mean, that'll shock them, right? Come back to attention, and the next slide you put up, boom, they're going to pay attention to that one. Vary instruction, presentation, discussion, interactive components, quizzes. Change voice cadence, move around, clap your hands, make eye contact, create different sensory stimuli. I was like, you ever go to Bob Little's classes sometimes? Hey, does it? Now, that's what we are. Come on, kiddos, pay attention to this. And he does a good job with that. It's kind of funny to do that he does it. Watch out for sensory adaptation, where the brain, if not presented with new material, will seek more interesting material. You're just going to daydream. You're going to go off somewhere. Now, the other part, let's congratulate ourselves, Sometimes if you say something really interesting, okay, and it really stimulates thought, they're going to go off as well. Okay? But maybe they'll have that aha experience, but you're going to pull them back again. All right, one last thing. I'm rushing a little bit here. I got 15 minutes. Perceptual organization. How the brain organizes information. The brain is constantly seeking meaning to make sense of the thousands of bits of information that it continually receives. Sensory information. We're flooded with it. And the brain is trying to figure out, okay, what's important, what's in it, what's meaningful. Concepts and skills taught in isolation are meaningless to students. Got to make connections. Brain-directed education supports first presenting big picture concepts that show you the big picture and then breaking them down into relevant chunks of information. Right? Chunks of information. Give me the big, go to the small. These chunks would relate students' prior knowledge and experience to formulate and retain new information. So again, it's the scaffolding. You introduce, big picture, chunk it, scaffold, up and up. The brain likes that. It likes meaning. You know, the basis of all bias and prejudice is all about perceptual organization. Okay? Because your brain is seeking meaning. Your brain does not like to be confused about things. So I can say, that person is this way, okay? And this is what they're like. And your brain gets what? Trained to do that over and over and over again. Come on. Application. At the beginning of a unit, state a broad-based learning goal that stimulates holistic thinking. What we're going to do today is prime the brain by promoting interest. And at the end of today, we're going to, and what you like about this is, introduce this goal at the beginning of each lesson, inform students what is expected of them, and then allow for feedback to see how well the students have learned. I always have to have feedback. All right, so what did I do at the beginning? Gave you that confusing overhead, but right, this is what we're going to do. They're the objectives. This is what I want you to be doing. This is a question. Don't answer that. Question of doing feedback. Okay, trying to get you involved. And I just messed it up. Oh no. Come on, come on. And then the students can look at you and go, "You're a fool, Steve. What are you doing?"
Changing the environment.
Changing the environment, right? This is an interesting question. When I used to do this 10 years ago, I used to get a lot of dissension about this. Okay? My personality is an important teaching skill. Answer this one. Yeah, a lot of you agree. Why? It's who you are, right? I think people relate to people who are genuine.
Yeah.
What else?
How you engage.
It's what?
How you engage.
How you engage. Right. How you engage. That's right.
Well, you have to establish a relationship really in order to teach it.
Right. And here's who I am. Right. This is who I am. Do you introduce yourselves to students the first day? This is my background. This is what I'm all about. So they can connect with you in that way. Personality is important. I don't like doing small group discussions. I mean, I have classes of 80 and 100, and you've got to do that sometimes. But that's just not me. I'm more comfortable doing this and then trying to get people to answer questions that way. That's just who I am. And I think you have to be able to fit different techniques to who you are. Okay?
We ask that question in the teacher education classes because the perception is that you know, your personality, you have to have a certain personality to be a teacher, and I want to kind of dispel that myth, because we know that that's inaccurate. Your attitude towards yourself
Yes.
and towards your students is a much greater indicator of your effectiveness. But it's so funny that you ask that, because that just always comes up, that perception of personality. So it's good. I have to go get my daughter.
Oh, okay.
Just want to say.
Your 15-year-old daughter.
Yeah, my
Who's
15-year-old
emotional?
will be emotional if I don't get her. Thank you.
All right, last thing, then we'll end. Cognitive disfluency, okay? If information feels easy to absorb, we have learned it well. Not true. Absolutely not true. Need to work hard to understand information. You got that, right? Extra effort signals the brain that this information is worth remembering. Vigorous education, right? We're trying to get people involved. It's there. You can't make it easy. Yours was a perfect example of that, how you were working with the students, and you got to throw things in that's difficult for them. It just works that way. You got to challenge people. Create desirable difficulties. Again, there's some research that talks about that there are zones of learning that's there. If you make it too hard, what happens? People are going to get upset, and I can't do this, what's wrong with me? Too easy, it's too easy. There's got to be a Goldilocks moment that's there, that's in the middle for them. So you're trying to do that for them. I don't know, in a overhead, you can do punctuation mistakes, leave out letters, shrink font, blurry copy. I didn't do that on purpose when I couldn't work my overhead, but they laugh about that too. That's a difficulty. You got to make it a little bit more difficult for them, to challenge them. The brain gets engaged that way. Okay? All right, one last question. Cognitive disfluency means need to work hard to understand information. My mind is strained. Can we go home now? 3 minutes, hold on. Extra effort is needed to learn. 1 in 3 is true, or 2 in 1 is true. Reverse the numbers there to make it difficult for you. There you go, 94%. Correct. You guys are so smart. Finish up. All right. Educational bias. Ready? We teach the way we've been taught. It's not going to work anymore. We need new methods of doing it. Adult multi-sensory learning is important. I know a lot of you are into learning styles. Are you an auditor? Are you a visual learner? Okay, no research on that stuff. What's happened in education is that they took that for multisensory learning for little children. It's important to do that, to activate the brain and make the connections. It doesn't translate to adults. Sure, you may be an auditory learner, a visual learner, but there's just not a lot of research with that to back that information up. A while back, there used to be something called whole brain learning. You have a left brain, you have a right brain. Some people are left brain dominant, some are right brain dominant. To that stuff too, there's no research to back that up either. That's there. But what happens in education, we have a tendency, we grasp onto this stuff, and we think, oh, that must be it. We're going to continue with this. And somebody makes a lot of money by doing workshops or off of this stuff. When people lack, and now this is a key that's here, especially in math. When people lack confidence in their skill level, they lack the ability to accurately evaluate their skill level. Oh, English too, right? Oh, just about everything that's there. So that takes extra effort then to sit down and explain to somebody. But emotionally, you're telling me that I'm wrong? I'm not wrong. It's such a difficult to do. And so now you're all therapists to try to talk with them about it. Still with me, right? You guys are good. An hour and 25 minutes. I'm summarizing now. Ready? New information is most effectively learned when lessons build on prior knowledge, vary enough to continually attract students' attention, Engage emotions. Those are jokes, that's laughter, okay, that's you and your personality. Allow time for knowledge to consolidate in memory systems. Employ multiple modalities through integration of technology and arts. Spaced practice has become really important with all this functional spaced practices. Instead of sitting down for 3 hours studying, what you really need to do is break it up into chunks, 15 or 20 minutes. The brain just gets a break, it processes it, that's there, and then you move to the next step. Again, I always did it the other way. I crammed, all the time. That wasn't the way to do it. The research says spaced practice is very important. Introduce desirable difficulties. We talk about that one. And here's the next big one, sleep. Telling your students you study at night, then you go to sleep. All kinds of research is done about how the brain, particularly hippocampus, is processing information as you sleep. Extremely important to do that. Oops. Effective lessons, individual lessons, grab attention, the newer, the more novel, the greater attention. Repeat, rehearse, perfect practice makes perfect, interesting redundancy, works. Prior knowledge makes information relevant, use media examples to do comparison. It's kind of a summary to talk about. Overview, what are we doing? We're trying to get people to attend. Still with me, right? Involve people. Involve the brain. Prompt interest. The more interested you are in something, the more you learn. Make it relevant as possible, meaningful to people. And by the way, we intuitively know how to engage the brain. It's built into your brain, right? You know all this stuff already. So you're just trying to be mindful about it. Got it? Okay, that's it. There you go. Okay? Thank you. So, questions?
So let me talk about that question I had. So on one of the slides you said that by age 10 you stop developing your brain, right?
No, I didn't say you stop developing your brain.
Oh, I can't remember exactly what it was. The decline starts after 10 years. Okay. So I read a few years ago, I read some research saying that that was no longer accurate, that now it was up to the upper teens that it will continue. So has that...
I haven't seen that. I didn't see that. Maybe that, I would love to see that. That's there.
Okay. I'll see
Okay,
if I
yeah,
can
see
find
if
it.
you find it for me. This fits with old Sigmund Freud, who also said that by the age of 8 to 10, your personality is locked in place. That's there. But I'd love to see that. There's more and more information that's coming out with these studies about this.
So,
What else?
One more question,
Okay.
if you don't mind. What happens to your brain when you get old and you start losing memory? What kind of part of the brain is it that stops functioning, or when you don't remember who your relatives are anymore? That type of old.
Well, we're not talking about dementia or cognitive impairment, right? That's more severe. That's there. As we get older, and I'm going through this, as we get older, what happens is that all our systems just don't work as well. They're not as effective. This old heart here, okay, is not as effective. We're getting a lot less blood and oxygen sent up through our body, particularly in the brain. That's there. So what winds up happening, I got this perfect example. You know Bob Little, I mentioned him twice. About a month ago, 2 months ago, we were talking about places we go to, and he said, oh, do you remember when we went to a place in Italy with the canals? And I went, yeah. St. Mark's Square, the Rialto, Murano Glass. Both of us were kind of drooling, going, could not come up with the answer. Okay, it was just what happened. Well, what happens is that it's short-term memory loss that's there, processing loss. My brain just wasn't coming up with that information because it just wasn't as efficient. Do you ever walk into a room and then go, what the hell am I doing here? There's actually something called the threshold effect. You've lost it if you go back out the door, stand out there, don't walk back in, it usually comes back in. That's it. And it's a matter of, don't think so hard about it. We're just not as efficient as we used to be. Not talking about Alzheimer's, dementia, or anything else. It's just, nothing is efficient anymore. I hate to say that. It's just, that's why we have these.
Yeah.
Then I can go, oh yeah, that was it. See, it was minutes. Oh, it's wonderful for going over. All right, I think you want to go, so let's do that. Hand those in. I appreciate the attention, okay, and the focusing. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Steve.